Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. I'm absolutely over the moon and excited, and lots of words that I can't even think of at the moment to have on the podcast today. I've got joining me Ian Johnston, who's the CEO of Osprey Charging Network. Ian, thank you ever so much. It's taken a little while, but you are one busy chap, aren't you? So thank you for joining me.
No, it's a pleasure to talk, Liz. Thank you for your time.
And for those of you that don't know Ian, he's also the chair of Charge UK. Now, we'll be talking about this as we go on, and that's only been kind of up and running for the last few months, hasn't it, as Charge UK? But something that I really, really want to kind of get into while we're talking. But again, just thank you for joining me. So, right. You've been involved in renewable energy projects since 2011. Can you just give me a little bit of your background? What sort of brought you into your current role at Osprey? You know, what was that journey? What did it look like?
So I started my career actually in the car industry with Volkswagen Group in the UK.
I saw that, yes.
And a friend of mine at the time is David Watson, who now, of course, founded and runs OMI, the home charging company. And Dave ran the parent company of OMI is called Temporis Capital, who manage investments and develop renewable projects. So Dave talked to me about what he was doing, launching a new business to develop wind farm projects, and asked me to come over. So in 2011, I went to work for Temporis Wind, which was a business developing onshore wind farms. And we ended up building the UK's largest portfolio of onshore wind projects. These were between 500 kilowatt and 1 megawatt wind projects. And we also developed about 100 megawatt of ground-based solar projects and about 30 biomass projects as well. So our skill set as a team was in the development of renewable projects, so grid connections, planning, and the delivery of everything that comes with that in terms of wayleaves and highways. And we'd started to develop battery projects, as most of these businesses had back at that time around 2016. And then obviously we heard the news that Volkswagen, Ionity, these businesses were going to start deploying EV charging sites across the UK. And we just thought, well, this is what we do. We're the experts in doing this in terms of finding those grid connections, building the projects. So the team at Temporis started to work for Tesla and other charger networks who were looking at doing grid feasibility works. And one of the businesses we started to work with was Osprey. So I met the founder, and when Investec invested into Osprey in February 2018, they asked me to come over and lead the business from there. So I think if you look at many of the kind of British companies that are leading the way in public charging, I think the Instavolt team, they all came from a solar business. I think the Gridserve team, again, Toddington, many of those people came from Belectric. So the DNA of what we do as an industry is that we're experts in developing and deploying grid-connected infrastructure. Is what we do. And I think certainly when myself and the team met the Osprey kind of founders and investors, the team from Investec, they again had spent years developing and funding and operating power projects. So, at the time it was a very new industry, but I think the DNA and the heritage of the people that have delivered much of our infrastructure today have been in renewable energy for a long time.
It seems like it, yeah. And I tell you what, I did notice recently. So you've got all you guys coming in, and I worked in telecoms for a while as well, and I can see a number of people coming in from the telecoms industry. So there's kind of like a pattern of people coming through the network, isn't there? But it's great to see that kind of those skills are transferable across sectors.
Yeah, and the telecoms guys, I think if you look at the businesses, the connected curbs, the believes, and the more of the AC on street and lamppost providers, I think that's where again people who've got great deep expertise in delivering cable infrastructure in the cities across the UK is key as well. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of that in the AC sector.
So I was doing a bit of checking up, and I didn't realise that the Osprey had been founded back in 2016. And it said so, founded in 2016 to install and operate 6 rapid chargers for Cheshire East Council. Now, I think I've got a friend who lives there, and I don't know whether she knows that, so I'm going to have to let her know. So Osprey's been going for quite some time, hasn't it?
Oh, it has, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think around the same time, both Osprey and Instavolt were came into the market at a similar time, bought in charge points with contactless card readers, and had a very fresh way of doing things. So it really, the business, as I say, took off when Investec invested in 2018. And then in 2019, we raised more money and we did the deal with Marston's, which has been an amazing partnership. And that's when things really started to accelerate. So, the business has been there for a while. But if you look at the fact that between 2016 and 2022, we installed around 400 chargers. And by the end of this week, we'll be at 800. So if you look at that rate of growth in the last 9 months, we've doubled what was 5 years' work. So, yeah, I mean, the last 18 months has just seen an amazing growth, both across the industry and with Osprey.
Yeah, definitely. So I was going to talk to you, perfect kind of segue here. So if we look at Salmon's Leap in so it's Dartmoor National Park, isn't it? So how many chargers went in there, and what does a good charge point installation look like? So you've got a farm shop, haven't you? So what would you say a good installation of a hub looks like?
Well, we know that what people want is the availability of charging. So we know that people would much prefer to get on a charger, and if they have to, charge at a slightly lower charge rate than if they than queuing. People don't want to worry about having to queue or if there's no chargers available. Now, the great thing about the hubs we're building is there's so much power being connected here that you can get the full power all the time. So that site has 16 chargers, each of which can go up to a peak of 300 kilowatts across the site.
Right.
The key thing, of course, is that we need to match the charging configuration within the site with the location that you're in. So that site is on the side. I mean, it's in effect a motorway services on the major route down from Exeter to Plymouth. So again, people will be using it as a pit stop to grab a coffee and get back on their journey. Which is why you need the very high power chargers. I think, where we're looking at installing in supermarkets or retail parks, you'll see a slightly lower rate of charger, but you want more chargers of maybe 75 or 100 kilowatts. So it's about speccing the charge rate to the natural dwell time of the site. But again, many of the sites, they are kind of great retail destinations, but they're also on major A roads. So you're catering for both audiences there. So look, people want amazing facilities where you'd want to stop with your family on a journey, and they want the charge rate that matches the dwell time, so that they're not having to leave a supermarket to go and move the car or because the charger's finished, but also when they come out of having whether it's a 15-minute stop to grab a coffee or an hour stop to grab some lunch, ideally we're trying to make sure that the charge rate hits that dwell time.
So it's going back to the right charger in the right place for the right amount of time, isn't it? And it's funny. So I've only been driving electric for the last 2 months. Got to say, absolutely love it. Wouldn't go back. I would say I was never a massive, no, sorry. I was a petrol head, but not kind of like major. I didn't get all excited about every single thing. Although I did used to kind of like, I don't know whether you remember, sorry, this is me going off on a tangent. I don't know whether you remember the I Spy books. Do you remember I Spy? So my son, when he was little, I bought him a few I Spy books, and it was I Spy cars. So, and actually I'd kind of go, right, okay, so we're driving along and going, so what kind of car is that then, James? Oh, that's a Volkswagen. What kind of car is that one then? That's a Vauxhall. And so that was kind of my level of petrol headiness. Headiness? I don't know whether that's a phrase, but so actually I've recognised now the the need for the right charging in the right place, you know,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and it just seems so important. I've had, in my 2 months of driving electric, I've had so many conversations with so many people at so many different charge points.
Yeah.
In fact, just over a week ago, my son and I, we were, I took him, he'll go to university next year, and I took him up to Durham. Now, we've only got a Hyundai Ioniq with a 38 kilowatt hour battery, so it took two charge stops for us to actually get all the way up there, because we were going a bit further up as well. And that, like I say, just those conversations, understanding what people are wanting, you know, and also make it, like you said, about making sure there's enough chargers there for everybody, so people aren't waiting. Because we did have, you know, some of the trunk roads. So I started on the M1, and then we kind of went up the A1. M1, I kind of knew we went to one major services, and I kind of knew that it would be a bit of a push to get a charger at the time that we were going. But it's understanding that, isn't it? It's looking at Zap Map. It's working out who to go to, which what, you know, which charger at which route, how many chargers are there, and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, but I think the situation's changing every week. We're seeing more hubs coming in on the motorways. I mean, the A1M, you know, Osprey alone have got a load of hubs now on that route between the M1, or between the M25 and you know, the Scottish border. So as have GridServe, as have others. So the situation is improving every week with new hubs
yes,
going in, and these are large hubs with, you know, 8, 16 high power chargers. So again, it
makes a
is a very
difference.
different position to where we were 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So Salmon's Leap, and I know that, so on your on the Osprey website there is a video of Salmon's Leap,
Yeah,
and it does look amazing. So I do want to go down and have a little sneaky peek.
we
And I
should do.
know that you've been working with Kate Tyrrell and Charge Safe as well, haven't you? Looking at kind of accessibility, and I could see that there were accessible spaces there, and that just, to me, you know, making sure that there's enough things there for people to kind of go and, you know, like you say, go and have a bite to eat or look around the farm shop or have a cup of tea, but also you're making things accessible for everybody.
Yeah, look, I think from our perspective, as all the charging networks, our objective is to encourage drivers to come and visit your site as best you can. I think the accessibility point, you know, Osprey partnered very early with Kate, because we wanted to kind of, you know, assess ourselves in terms of how well we were doing, but also to show that we've got partners that are allowing us to build accessible bays. The problem for the charging networks is that we're not ultimately in control of the space we're given to build
No.
the charging infrastructure. So I think that's why there's a lot of work needed between industry and government on this to find out what the right way forward is. You know, ultimately, the challenge you get is, you know, if you don't have the space to build a fully accessible installation here, is it still better to have some charging than none? And the same comes back to, you know, if you can't bring all the power you want into a site, is it better to have a charger that isn't of the perfect charge rate than having none? And they're the sorts of decisions and discussions that the charging networks are having to make all the time.
I think what I'd say, because obviously that's load balancing, isn't it? If you've got a number of chargers and the power isn't quite the right level, so you're kind of balancing the load. And I'm now understanding that myself. I think maybe what's needed is some kind of signage to say, you know, at peak times there may be a kind of like, obviously you've got to word it correctly, haven't you? But at peak times you may not may not actually get the charging speed that you would expect, but we will do our best to kind of maintain what we've promised. Would you agree? I don't know.
I don't. So I don't see there being. I don't see there's an issue. There shouldn't be an issue with new sites that are being built today where people aren't getting the advertised charge rate. I mean, I think, you know, the market has progressed so much now that you know, most of the reputable networks out there will be delivering the charge rate that's advertised to the driver. I think in some of the legacy infrastructure that might have been an issue. But for example, on the, you know, with the hubs like Salmon's Leap that you've referenced there, I mean, not only will you get the charge rate that is advertised in Zap Map and on Google, but also the charger will tell you what it is that's limiting the charge, if it's the vehicle or if it's the charger. But
Right.
I think, again, that's a legacy issue, and people shouldn't be having that issue on the network today.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And I think maybe the chargers that I was talking about were legacy chargers. So, it was one of those things. But yeah, the experiences I've had so far were really good. In fact, you talked about Marsden's earlier. So we went to the Gower Peninsula, and we went to a
Oh yeah,
Marsden's pub specifically because there was an Osprey charger there. And
yeah, brilliant,
I did do a little Instagram video as well, and went, thank
brilliant.
you, this is really good. I like this.
Awesome,
So
awesome.
I want to see, I'll definitely go to some more. Will you do me a favour and tell me a bit about Charge UK? And because I mean, obviously there's a lot to talk about all of this. So why did you think why did you think it was important to actually start a trade body? Was it to demonstrate a united front?
So there were two reasons really. Firstly, there were a number of work streams with government last year, the consumer regulations, the Rapid Charge Fund, the Levi Fund, where there were a number of workshops being ran by the OZEV team engaging with charging networks. And what became really clear from the, one charging network would make a comment on a call, and so many others would shout up in agreement with them. It became clear that whilst we all compete incredibly aggressively with each other, to win these contracts, and the bar of competition is rising all the time. Once a contract's been awarded, we're all aligned in what we want, which is it to be as easy as possible and as quick as possible to deploy as much charging infrastructure as possible. So we've got the contracts we've won, so GridServe, so BP, so Shell, and the others. So I think it became very clear to us on these consultation calls that actually we're all completely aligned. And actually, we're also trying to convey quite a complicated message around how do you measure reliability for consumer regulations. If you're not an expert in OCPI, like the charge networks are, it's a hard thing to comprehend.
Yeah.
So that was where it really started. And the other thing which started to kick off was obviously the press activity, asking questions around the quality of the network and the rate of deployment. And I think, again, what we were hearing back from the journalists and the major newspapers, but they said, well, we don't know who to go to. So we can come to you individually, but we need a name, we need a brand to go to, so we can just get a comment. So there were probably 5 or 6 networks initially, and then that very quickly became 11 networks who were really keen to make something happen. And then this was put in Q4 2022. We said, right, let's make it happen if everyone's in for, let's put some funding in together and make it a reality. We ran a process to appoint an agency, and we hired Connect, who clearly had done a huge amount of homework and knew a lot about the space and a lot about Westminster, which was great. And it was crazy. And word spread pretty fast. And by the time we launched, just 3 months later, there were I think there was 18 members on the day we wrote the press release, the day before. And by the time we did the AGM, no more than 18 hours later, we had 3 more members coming in. So look, it kind of people ask the question, was it difficult to get everybody on one page? But the alignment in things like, what are the barriers to delivering a grid connected project? What do we all think are the important things on consumer regulations? We're aligned on 99% of issues. It was really quite it was quite something how it came together, and the we were due to, I think we launched in April, and already in March we found ourselves very quickly in a room with the Minister Jessie Norman talking about consumer regulations, and it was just great that we were able to talk as one voice so quickly. So it's been a brilliant journey, but whether you've got BP and Shell and Total and these major global companies, you've got the British startup businesses like Osprey, GridServe, Connected Curb. And then you've got other businesses like Mare, IoT, Fastned, these big European players, and we all feel the same way. We all know exactly what it takes to get these hubs built quicker, to get the on-street projects built quicker. So it's been quite simple to find the 5 key things we want to focus on, really.
I'm looking at the members now, and that is an impressive bunch of charge point operators, isn't it, really? Like you've just said, you've got Tesla, Binfox, Pogo, PodPoint, GridServe, Ionity, Osprey, of course, Fastned. So that's just Chargy. Yeah. there's so many of you, and it's actually so nice to see all of that happening. And I know it was really exciting for everybody. Because did you launch on the first day of Fully Charged Live South?
Yeah. So the Fully Charged team were great.
Timing.
So we hosted the I think we did the press launch the night before, and obviously we liaised with the team at Fully Charged, who obviously had some huge OEM announcements through the day, and then they actually hosted the AGM upstairs above the event. And again, it was amazing because there were people in the event hall who hadn't signed up yet, who were signing up that morning and came and joined the AGM by 2:00. But it was just quite something to have all the different CPOs who until that time had really just been competitors sat around one table, agreeing to take things forward. So yeah, it was an exciting 24 hours. And I think on the Tuesday after the Fully Charged Live and the bank holiday, then it was straight down to business, working with OZEV on the consumer regulations.
That's what I was going to ask you. I suppose my big question is, so what can Charge UK do to help policy and decision making? And we talked about this, and I'm not going to say too much about it, but we talked about this before we started recording. But obviously decisions were made last week which we weren't expecting or hoping that weren't true from government. But obviously, you've still got Charge UK still got a voice in this. Things are still going to move forward. So what can Charge UK do as a voice from the charge point operators to actually push forward the charge point agenda?
So the one thing that everybody agrees on, whether it's government, the public, people who oppose the movement, and the charging businesses and our investors, we all want to see more chargers deployed as quick as possible. That's the main thing. So our job really is to educate government, to help government on what is it that can be done to help us just deploy quicker. So much of our time is spent talking about what's the process we go through to deliver a grid connection? What's the planning process? What's the highways process we need to go through? And then what can we do together to help the uptake of electric vehicles and to grow that consumer confidence in doing so? So I think the job of Charge UK is really to provide clear explanation and detail and data to government to help them make the right decisions. So there's a load we need to do there. I think we can provide clarity, because if you have a position that we can provide and you can say, look, not only do BP and Shell feel this way, but so do Osprey and Gridserve and Fast Ed and Ionity. That's incredibly compelling. So if you can give that on one page to government and say, look, if you do these things, we can deploy more chargers quicker. We will be able to serve customers better. I think it's about giving that clarity of a broad opinion and the insight. So consumer regulations are critically important. If you touched on accessibility earlier, that if you were to mandate overnight accessibility regulations on the charging networks, nothing would change at all tomorrow, because we're not in control. If you were to mandate a target on chargers being deployed, nothing would change. So it's our job to explain what are the things that actually make the difference, and whether we can deploy, we're at 48,000 chargers today. How do we get to 100,000 by this time next year? Well, we've got all the projects. We're all trying to build them. So what barriers need to be moved to help us build quicker? So in summary, I think it's an educational role, and it's the onus is on us to be clear and concise and to take OZEV and the government on a journey with us to explain things.
What about, because there's the other question, isn't there? There's that thing that keeps happening, which is the FUD, the fear, uncertainty and doubt, isn't there? So how can Charge UK help with that? I mean, I know last week we had kind of like the Stop Burning Stuff campaign that was launched with Fair Charge and Fully Charge, Fully Charge and Fair Charge, whichever way around. So how can you as a trade body kind of work together with one voice to actually provide that sort of that counter to all of the FUD? Not
So I
easy, I
think,
know.
as you've said, the people out there doing amazing work in the space. The team at Fully Charged and Quentin and the team at Fair Charge are doing an amazing job. Really, really getting out there and spreading the messages. I think what's been interesting about Charge UK is that since we launched, there's a real desire to collaborate across industry. So we've got a great dialogue now with the SMMT. We're having great conversations with the likes of RAC, AA, Auto Trader. So we have, across the members, nearly 30 businesses with nearly 30 marketing teams with the data, the messaging, the examples of what good looks like. So I think the role for us is to really just keep pushing the good news stories to those other related parties from the car industry, from the car insurance industry, the roadside industry, and to OZEV themselves to say, look, guys, here are the great bullets that you can use. We will absolutely, as Charge UK, have an even stronger voice next year. There'll be even more members coming on board who can help that. But I think we as individual charging businesses, we have so many messages and great examples that can be shared and amplified. And that's what I think you'll see a lot more of in 2024 and beyond.
Which is brilliant. And actually, you were just talking then, and it got me thinking about best practice. Get my teeth in. Best practice. So, is there an ability with Charge UK? Obviously, I would say Osprey is demonstrating and leading the way with best practice. So, if you're kind of your chair of of Charge UK, Osprey is leading the way. How do you, as a trade body, ensure that that's what kind of is being pushed forward? I mean, obviously we've got the charge point regulations, which kind of force it a little bit, don't they? But actually, there's got to be a want to do better than just what the regulations say. How would you say that Charge UK, or would that be something you kind of say, well, no, I can't force the members to do that, but Osprey are going to do this, so hopefully they'll follow us.
Look, it's very kind of you to recognise the good work that the Osprey team that work for me are doing, but I think to be fair to the other members of Charge UK, there's a number of other areas where there are some great leaders in those businesses too, and I think
I know.
There's an interesting point here about the consumer regulations. They are imperative to give consumers the confidence that the charging network is reliable and there for them when they need it. But what's interesting is so much of what was in the consumer regulations, since they were first drafted 2 years ago, the private market has now solved for. So if you look at the regulations around roaming, for example, I mean, the majority of charging networks are now roaming fully with the likes of ZapMap, ZapPay, Allstar, Power. So some amazing solutions out there. And again, think of the mindset of a charging network. We just want all the drivers to come to our site. So why would we not want to roam in that regard?
Yes.
If you look at the accessibility, the reliability point, there's a number of networks who are out there today all saying we're at 99% already. So the private market has already done its job in getting there. Because we know that if you have a bad experience at one of our sites, you're not going to come back. We know that. So it's not in our interest to be there. Now, there are businesses who historically have struggled or have been less successful in delivering that reliability, but they've put a massive focus on that in recent years. And again, you've seen their levels of reliability increase quite significantly lately as well. So I think the fact that these businesses have all come together to form Charge UK shows that there's a commitment to delivering what consumers want anyway, be it roaming, be it contactless payment on units. So the private market is a very professional industry now. The competition is intense, and we are each thinking of ways to convince. How can I make you turn into my site rather than the GridServe site or the Mayor site or the IoT site? And we're all doing it all the time. So that competition is driving us all forward, and the real winner is the driver, because the choice and the reliability and the ease of use is just getting higher and higher all the time.
I just wish more people recognise this, because you're right. You're completely right. And I was talking to somebody today about a conversation I'd had last week with a friend of mine who just, going back to the FUD, there's so much FUD that came from, and that kind of campaign from the Daily Mail and kind of, various other, kind of papers where where she'd obviously taken some of it in, and was hearing negative stories about
Yeah.
charging, and I mentioned one thing that happened when me and my son were up in on our way back from Durham, actually, and all it was that somebody was sat at a charge point 100%. And, we didn't have lots of miles left on the charge, so there's only certain things you can do. But there were plenty of other options nearby. So we just drove to the next reliable charger, the next reliable network, which was a few miles away, but we managed to do it. But it is just that what people want to hear, isn't it? And this friend, I love her to bits, honestly, but I just was, I just thought, oh my God, they've won if they're getting you to listen, to hear that and hear that as a truth when it's not.
Yeah, well, I think this is why we just need to keep getting the good messages out there. So,
Yeah.
and every week now there's a new charging hub being launched, a new on-street project being launched. So we just got to keep pushing the good news story so people just see that there is charging infrastructure everywhere. It is reliable. It is easy to use. So yeah, we've got to push those good messages out to the public.
Yeah, definitely. So what are the next steps for the charging network and for Osprey, for Charge UK? What would you like to see happen between now and, it was 2030, but 2035 now, whatever, and actually the question is, does it make a difference that it's been pushed back by 5 years to you and the network?
Well, look, we're recording on the 25th of September. So as things stand today, we're led to believe from what the BBC reported on Thursday that the ZEV mandate, the zero emission vehicle mandate, isn't changing. So actually nothing's changed. Yeah, the car companies are still required to bring in the same number of vehicles that they were before, and therefore there will still be as many electric vehicles on the road as they were going to be before last Wednesday. So I think from our perspective, we're still gunning for the same dates, and our objective is still to deploy the infrastructure ahead of the vehicles coming. So, Charge UK's focus is to create an environment that allows us to deploy that infrastructure even quicker. So our main focus is working with government on let's get the consumer regulations finally defined and launched and delivered. Let's remove the barriers that are slowing down the deployment of projects in terms of grid and planning and highways. There are areas where the government has decided to intervene in terms of the Levi Fund and the Rapid Charge Fund, and we're working with the government to help ensure that those policies only add value and allow, speed up deployment, not slow things down. So these are the areas which we're focused on working with government, I guess, under the umbrella of the ZEV mandate, which, as things stand today, we're being told isn't changing, which is amazing news. And underneath the headlines from last week, the key thing is that almost when in 2020 Boris Johnson announced the 2030 ban, it made a massive difference. It changed the British public's mindset overnight. But honestly, what's actually making the difference now is the investments from the car companies. So if you look at the global manufacturers, there's over £500 billion of investment that's been committed to by the car companies to transform their production lines into building electric cars. So, and there are fines in place on the car companies under the ZEV mandate if they don't register those cars in the UK. So, look, from our perspective, this is still happening. And we're just going to keep on building the infrastructure and work with government to deploy it as quick as we can.
That's good. I like it. I was hoping you'd say that anyway. We are fighting the FUD, fighting the opposition, and we've got to move this all this forward. Would you say that the regulations, is there anything that needs adding on to those regulations that you can see?
I think, well, again, let's just start with the caveat that I think the regulations are important for consumer confidence, but the private market is now moving so far beyond that. I think there are some areas that need more attention that the industry needs to work with government going forward. If you look at things like van fleet charging, I think there's more work that everyone can do in that regard. But again, I wouldn't say that regulation is the answer. It's about having halo projects. So Salmon's Leap we talked about before has the long accessible bays. I've seen a few sites in the last few weeks that have launched with long vehicle charging bays, which is great. I think we need to land on a position between industry and government on what the right approach for accessibility is, because again the charging networks are not in control of that. So I think there's a few areas where things need to be ironed out. I think terminology is another work stream where there's been a lot of talk. What is fast versus slow versus rapid versus ultra rapid, and if what does the layperson think when they rock up to a charger in terms of charge rate? So there's a bit of work to be done there. But the major thing that people really care about, if what the charging networks are delivering is reliable, easy to use, and it's roaming, then actually all we all want to see is just more infrastructure everywhere. So that's got to be the key priority for the next year or two. And I think that when Charge UK launched, there were 40,000 chargers in the ground. There were another 40,000 in the pipelines from the members that were then. So we can double the network in the next 12 months anyway. So we're focused on what are the things that might slow that down, and let's move those out of the way.
That's brilliant. Honestly, do you know what? I have got a question for you though that I was just thinking of. What about VAT?
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think
it's a pain, isn't it? Really, it's compared to home.
But it's so important because we live in a different world to before the invasion of Ukraine. So yes, energy prices have come down from the peak they're at in September, October last year, but they're still more than double what they were before the invasion. So look, and we to be truly equitable, we need public charging to be accessible for all. So I think the levelising the VAT to make it 5% for those who charge on the public networks, like it is for those at home, is just such an easy, quick win that would make such a massive difference for so many people. So yeah, look, we're working with government, we're working with Fair Charge and the OEMs as well, and everybody's in alignment. This would make such a big difference and would help remove one of the last remaining hurdles that people have as a concern to making the transition.
And just tell me, so when did you first drive your? I'm going to go off on a little tangent again. When did you first drive an EV then? And what was it? Yeah.
I think the first EV I drove was a Renault Zoe,
right?
And I went to, and it was before I joined Osprey, to an Osprey site, I think in Fleet, in Hampshire, and then obviously now I've got very fortunate to have two EVs, so first and second car, both EVs, and I think of my 6 neighbours, 5 of them have now got EVs, and my next door neighbour asked me on Sunday, I think it's probably time to make the switch. So now again, they've all got a driveway, so for them it's a no-brainer. I say to them all, do any of you drive more than 250 miles in a day? And of course the answer is no for all of them. So it's a no-brainer for them. And I've got a lot of friends who live in apartments and some who they probably charge once every fortnight at a public charging site. So there's loads of great case studies out there, but that's not to say there aren't people who definitely need more infrastructure.
No, exactly. So go on. So what are you currently? What are your 2 EVs that you're driving then?
So my car is a BMW i3,
okay,
which I love. It's like a little go-kart. But I love that. So that's the local runaround. And then because we had 2 young kids and a dog, and we needed the space, I was fortunate to get an Audi leased through Osprey, so and through the Octopus scheme. So
excellent.
It was a lovely car, but it's not mine. It's a lease car.
But you like the i3 with the suicide doors, then, don't you?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's
yeah. Oh, fabulous. Oh, Ian, it's been so lovely talking to you. I feel like there's so much more to talk about, and I would love to just talk to you again when things have moved forwards and it's kind of, and Charge UK's been around a year or a year, 18 months, 2 years, and also see how Osprey's doing with everything. I've definitely got to go and visit Salmon's Leap. It sounds a perfect site for us to go to and just see those lovely reliable chargers and that reliable network that you've got. But just to let everybody know, so for Osprey's website, it's ospreycharging.co.uk, and I will share that in the show notes. Is there anywhere that you would like people to find you on social media if you're up for saying hello to people who are interested?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Osprey have a very active Twitter account, as do I as well. So, but we're always up for feedback on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, yeah, you know, look, we're all listening all the time to feedback on what we can do better. So yeah, please do.
So I will share all your social media sites as well. You're on LinkedIn as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
And so actually, if you do find Ian, you'll find a number of, because you share quite a lot of things. So today I listened to an interview that you had with Times Radio. And that was really, really interesting. So it's always interesting and kind of good to find people who will share something that's the truth rather than that old FUD that we don't want. So thank you, Ian. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and thank you again. And to everybody else, I'm going to say thank you for listening and watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.